Hello, my name is Ron Williams. I'm the CEO of Talon Companies, consisting of three companies. One company is Talon Executive Services, Inc., and we protect high net worth individuals with executive protection. We do threat assessments, violence in the workplace prevention and mitigation. We do background checks, and we do corporate investigations as it relates to theft in the workplace and drugs in the workplace. Our second company is Talon Cyber Tech, and we focus on the ever increasing issue of cyber security, number one issue right now in the security world. And the last company is Secure Strategies International, which is a consulting company. And we do security risk vulnerability assessments and emergency response plans and business continuity plans. This morning, I have a discussion with a longtime friend of mine who has a very interesting background. But before I introduce him, I want to show you a book that everyone should read. It's called The War on Cops by Dr. Heather McDonald. And she analyzes the ever-increasing crime problem in America today and has some tremendous recommendations and answers for what we see is spiking in crime and heinous crimes, murder, assaults. And with that, I want to take time to introduce my good friend and esteemed individual that I have a lot of respect for. I worked with Henderson Cooper years ago when I was in charge of presidential protection here in Los Angeles for the Secret Service. And Henderson Cooper was the intelligence division with LAPD. Henderson Cooper graduated from UCLA, and he spent 24 years in the Los Angeles Police Department working on terrorism, or narcotics, gangs, and tactical and undercover operations. He retired as a detective supervisor shortly after the attacks on the World Trade Center. I'm going to let Henderson Cooper tell you about what he's been doing since his departure from LAPD. But what we want to discuss today is the ever-increasing crime problem in America and get a perspective from a true law enforcement officer that spent 24 years on the streets of LA and then later on combating terrorism. So with that, I want to introduce Henderson Cooper, a.k.a. Coop. Good morning, Coop. How are you?
Good morning, Ron. Good to see you, my friend. I like that hat.
Yeah,
wondering if I can ever get one.
I'll get you one. I got a lot of different colors, so I think you'll like them.
I would like that. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah. So, Henderson, let's kind of start off with the ever-increasing crime problem here in the United States, especially in our major big cities. We're seeing a lot of disrespect for police officer authority. We're seeing murder rates go up and assaults. And there's so many examples that you hesitate to even point one out because they're happening now, not weekly, they're happening daily. and there's some unbelievable things going on, like the young couple that were dragged out of the car in Chicago and shot on the street. People are being attacked by walking down the street, and people are genuinely afraid now to be in the cities. Portland is still every night undergoing fire bombings and theft and mayhem. So I want to get your perspective as a law enforcement officer for 24 years. And then I would like for you to talk about your career afterwards and the war on terrorism. So you've got the platform with those topics. What's your thought, Henderson?
Well, thanks. And this is a great topic. It's a very timely topic. Not enough is being said about this at this time. We have a problem going on in America, pretty much in the world. There's crime everywhere in the world, and we get, I read every day about comparisons about crime in America, crime in other countries. None of it really matters. What really matters to people is what is happening in my home, what is happening in my community, what is happening in my country. And what I'm seeing right now is a progression that began back when I joined LAPD in the beginning. It was right after turmoil in the city with the riots in Los Angeles. And during my career, I went through several different episodes of riots and insurrection and problems. I was able to see the crime increase as time went by. We had a small department at that time, something in the order of 7,000 or 8,000 officers. They've spent until today trying to get up to a number of about 10,000. And if you put that in perspective, the city of Los Angeles has approximately 4 million people, a little bit more, give or take, in the city of Los Angeles. And if you include the county, which surrounds the city, that's about 9,000 people. And LAPD right now is struggling to stay above 9,000 and trying to get to 10,000 officers. And in perspective, if you look at the city of New York, where they have a similar population, a little bit more, a few million more, and they have 45,000 officers for a similar population number. It's a more congested city. It's a smaller landmass of city that they patrol. But we have 9,000 officers that patrol a very large space with a lot of people. And that puts a big challenge on the police departments. And what has happened as of late, and you mentioned some of the statistics talking about deaths. I'm looking at a report right now from Police One that talks about FBI just completed their accounting of deaths of officers and assaults on officers, and the numbers are astounding. It's somewhere in the area of 56,000 assaults on officers across the country. And just so we can understand what we're talking about, the officers of each city are there to protect you. They're there to protect your home. They're there to protect you. They're there to protect your children, your family, your spouse. They're there to protect your property. They're there to protect your jobs. They're there to protect your ability to earn a living and live comfortably. They're there to provide the opportunity for you to go to parks, to go to the beach, to enjoy life, to be able to walk down your street safely and comfortably without fear and without threat. They're there for you to be able to go shopping at your malls and your stores and not have crime occurring at your foot or to you. And our officers are being assaulted. Our officers are being attacked. And it comes out of a time when we've seen politicians who have stopped supporting the officers, stopped encouraging the officers, stopped talking about the real problems, and instead pointing the finger at the officers. And as activist groups point the finger at officers and suggest that the officers are responsible for the crime and responsible for the problem, this is happening, and we're not getting the support that those officers need. And I'll be quite honest with you. If this were the beginning of my career and I had the choice, I'm not so sure I would have made the choice to join a local city police department anymore. The dangers are higher, the threat is different. And you can't say, well, officers are hired to face that danger. No, officers are hired to ensure the safety of the community, to work with the community. And it's a symbiotic relationship in which the citizens do right, the officers do right, and we make the world a safer place. But when we don't get that, don't get that relationship and we don't maintain it, it falls apart. And the blame seems to always fall on the officers. And this is a problem. Officers are not responsible for the crime. The crime is happening absent the officers. The officers are there to deal with the crime. And they always suggest that the training needs to happen at the officer level. Well, officers get trained every single day. There's no organization that trains more than law enforcement. With the Secret Service, I've worked with every agency in the country and quite a few around the world. All law enforcement is on a constant training platform every single day. And when there's a special problem, we get special training. That's a continuous process in law enforcement. But what's happening is our cities are changing, our citizenry are changing. And people are now accepting people running into the Walmarts and grabbing things. I hope that it's okay to mention a brand name, but running into a store and stealing things off the shelf and just walking out the door. And if they face any kind of resistance, getting into conflict with the people. And people are seeing people having their purses stolen on the street and people assaulted on the street. There's this game where people walk up behind somebody and they punch them in the side of the head by surprise. And, women are getting attacked. Children are being attacked. People are being kidnapped. We just went through a long series of a search for a couple bodies from a recent kidnapping and death. This is happening everywhere. And it's happening in a time when all the attention is being thrown away from the source. And the source is the citizenry. Our citizens, our communities, our community leaders seem to be changing and seem to be accepting this time of chaos. Seattle being a great example, where they were okay with this idea of this concept of, and I hate the term, defunding police and letting anarchists take over controlling the cities. This doesn't work.
But I'm familiar with New York City when Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Bill Bratton. Bill Bratton was I believe, chief of police, and they instituted the window break concept of law enforcement. When they did that and they started arresting people for misdemeanor violations like jaywalking. I mean, people got arrested for shoplifting, et cetera. It drove heinous crimes down. The murder rate went down. The assault level went down. And the reason is because if you're going to hold people accountable for misdemeanor violations, they're not going to be engaged in criminal felony violations because they know that they're going to be held accountable. The problem that I see today is that George Soros has backed DAs throughout the United States that are ultra liberal, and they have no concept of what it takes to have a safe environment for the citizenry. And they're inclined more to sympathize with the perpetrator than they are the victim. And this has a rippling effect. And, there are some cities that are holding the line. It was real interesting. Detroit, for instance, they still arrest people for misdemeanors, et cetera. And Detroit used to be a real dangerous city. They don't have nearly the crime problem that, say, Chicago, New York, Seattle, Portland. They just don't have that type of problem like those other cities. And the difference is the community and the politicians back the police department and give them authority to make arrests and to prosecute those offenders. So uh, I think that we are, in the cusp of some bad decision making with politicians that are wimps that don't understand what goes on the streets of our big cities. They don't get off their butts and go ride in a police car, which would probably open their eyes up immensely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so there is a war on cops, and it's by design. And I was real disappointed in the Department of Justice's report on threats and crime. They attributed to white supremacy, but they ignored Black Lives Matter, which has always been a terrorist organization, and Antifa. They weren't even mentioned. And these are the same people who burned buildings, robbed stores, etc., and killed a lot of people. And they were ignored. And that goes to the heart of the problem too, is that by not holding these folks accountable, it encourages lawlessness.
Yes.
And I wanted to get your perspective from that point of view of a police officer that spent time out on the street. Oop, tell us a little bit about what you did afterwards with the war on terrorism.
That's interesting. It all actually began when I was still with LAPD. I was approached by the Department of Defense, Naval Special Warfare, and they asked me to help them out with a training program that involved Navy SEALs. And so the department gave me allowance to go down to San Diego and start working with Naval Special Warfare down there. And it was a training program with certain special skills that they thought that I brought to the table, along with a few other instructors. During that time, that was about the time when 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I was still with LAPD, but I began doing surveillance on terrorist targets for the anti-terrorist division and the FBI. And what happened as time passed, I was approached by the Central Intelligence Agency and asked to come and join a program that they were developing to deal with terrorism, all under the banner of the war on terrorism. And so I left LAPD by retirement, and I began working for the Central Intelligence Agency. Throughout my career, I've had a very wide spectrum of experience. I was able to work with pretty much all of the federal agencies domestically that we have: Central Intelligence Agency, the Secret Service, DEA, FBI, NSA, and several of the military entities, SEAL teams, and some of the others that I won't mention the names of because they asked that their names not be mentioned, and they changed their names a lot. And so that gave me a broad experience. And I began working internationally in training programs also with police departments and intelligence agencies from other countries. So I was able to get a look at what other countries were doing with crime and terrorism. And I was able to share my experience and knowledge on the subject. And so it's been a good and wide-ranging opportunity for me, and I'm really blessed. And after leaving government service, I had the opportunity to work with several companies that were started by former, just like with Talon, former Secret Service, former FBI, former CIA, former DOD people, Department of Defense people, and I got to work with some of the highest profile business people and international people in the world. If I could say their names, they're easily recognized people at the very top of the Fortune 500. Matter of fact, I would say the top Fortune 50 people in the world. And that was also an enlightening experience for me. So I was around some pretty interesting circles and worked with some pretty interesting companies.
Can you hear me?
But yeah, I can hear you. I wanted to touch on what you were talking about in terms of law enforcement and the focus on law enforcement. One of the situations that we have going on in this country is a misunderstanding about how law enforcement works and what the relationship is between law enforcement and the public. And we should be clear. Some years ago, LAPD tried a program in which they had Nordstrom's customer service people come and teach LAPD how to do customer service, because Nordstrom's, the company, has a good reputation for customer service. You buy something there, you wear it for a month or two, and you take it back, and they accept it, and they give you your money back. It's kind of a unique kind of thing. I don't know if that's still their policy, but it was thought that they could teach LAPD how to be nicer, as if we weren't nice. And it didn't last very long because the concept simply doesn't work. And the reason why the concept doesn't work is this. If a citizen drives down the street and they see a police car, what happens? The first thing that happens is they think, okay, am I speeding? Am I driving too fast? Am I driving too slow? Are my hands on the steering wheel? Am I straddling the lanes? Did I miss a stop sign? Did I miss a stoplight? Anxiety develops. And not anxiety because they fear that they're going to be hurt, but because they know that the police are there to enforce the laws. And what that talks about is, do they see the police department as their friend? And yes, we would want to have that kind of friendly relationship with the citizens. But the reality is, when they see the uniform, they see the black and white or whatever color your police car is, anxiety develops. The next aspect of it is when crime occurs. The truth of the matter is, when a crime occurs, the police probably are not going to be there. It's obvious. The criminals know where the police are. They see the police car. They see the uniform. They know all they have to do is wait till the police car passes. They can commit their crime. So the police probably aren't going to be there when you need them. And when you do call them, it's probably going to take them time to get there. I talked about the numbers of police officers, 9,000 police officers in Los Angeles, 4 million people or more. So it's going to take time. And when we get there, the crime has already happened. The bad guys are probably already gone, and you're frustrated and disappointed and unhappy, and the police are going to take a report. So that doesn't build a warm, fuzzy feeling with the police department. And when you see conflict, when you see the police department stopping somebody or encountering somebody in arrests seldom are friendly, laughing, jovial experiences where two friends are hugging each other and talking about old times, and they kindly walk over to the police car, and they get in the police car and they go off to face the repercussions of the trouble they've committed. They are often conflicts. They're often adversarial, almost always adversarial. And it doesn't look pretty. If you're standing on the sidelines and you watch it, it's not going to look pretty. An arrest does not look pretty. Putting handcuffs on a person, taking away someone's freedoms, taking them to jail, it's not pretty. And it often is not an event that happens without violence. And people misconstrue that to be the way it is and the way it has to be. And they attach the blame not on the criminal who commits the crime, but the officer who's come in response to the crime. Police don't show up and create a problem. A problem exists, and the police show up. And they show up because the citizens call them. That's why they're there. And our politicians who don't support law enforcement, they claim it when it's convenient for them. When they're going for election, they talk about, they get a bunch of policemen or people dressed in police uniforms, they take photos with them. They claim that they have a good relationship with the police, they support the police. The reality is they get special protection. They get special consideration. They may even have the authority to carry weapons themselves. If they don't, they can hire policemen and they can hire security, and they live behind gates and they're protected and they're driving. Often they have drivers who are law enforcement officers carrying a gun and driving them to and from work. Citizens don't have that. Citizens don't have their own private policeman. They don't have their private protection. There's the risk and the threat involved with the weapons in America, and whether or not America wants weapons, and whether concealed carry is acceptable, and the right to bear arms is under debate now, even though it's a constitutional issue. Citizens don't have what the politicians have. The politicians live a special life, and so it presents a problem, and the problem is not being addressed in the right way. We're not looking in the right direction.
Right. I remember one of my daughters. I have 4 daughters. One of my daughters was very vociferous in her overview of policing, and I think she had been infected by, by this liberal mentality of cops are evil and bad, et cetera, et cetera. So
mine too.
I took her down to the police department and had her do a ride along for about 3 or 4 nights. And she came back realizing that her perceptions of the police and policing was skewed, and that she got a firsthand view of what life was like out on the streets, with what cops have to deal with. And most Americans don't understand that. They live in their two-car garage home. They go to their nice job. They're surrounded by, quote, nice people. And so they never see the evil that's out there on the street. And as a result, they get a skewed overview of what law enforcement really does. And what law enforcement really does is stand in the hedge to defend citizens against evil perpetrators who, given to their own demise, will steal, rob, assault, and as long as there's no consequences and not held accountable, we're going to continue to see the rise in crime till it gets so painful that people decide to step up and back the police departments, because I'm astounded by somebody like Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, who still talks about defunding the police and et cetera, with the high murder rate that's going on in Chicago. They're not really taking any positive steps to reduce that crime, to infiltrate the gangs, to put these people in jail. And as a result, you have people like Bill de Blasio of New York. They have no real understanding of what's going on. And because of that, they paint, the police officers as predators and evil people. And look, in every profession that I know of, there's a bad egg. There's bad attorneys, there's bad doctors, there's, because they're human beings. And so you have a cadre of people that are evil bent and they're bad. But when it comes to police officers, I'd say 98%, 99% of the men and women who put on that badge and gun have nothing but the idea that they are there to protect the citizen and do their job. And, like I said, there are a few bad eggs. there's, bad police officers. I spent 23 years in the Secret Service. There were some bad agents,
Yeah.
and I hate to admit that, but that's unfortunately that's human nature.
Yeah.
So I need to wrap the show up. Coop, thank you for your insight on crime today and the police officer and what they have to deal with out on the street. And thank you for your time spent in the Central Intelligence Agency on the war on terrorism. That's an ongoing issue that will be with us for a very long time. And, we could talk about Afghanistan, Iraq, and the issue of terrorism all day long. But at the end of the day, I'm concerned about our country. I'm concerned about where we're going as a country. And if we don't get a handle on this crime problem and start backing the police and hold people accountable and prosecute those who engage in illegal activity, like walking into a Walmart and stealing. California has a law that you can steal up to $960. And as long as you don't exceed that, it's a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. They write you a ticket. And so now you have the crooks going into stores with a calculator so that they know exactly where they're at on the limit. They can steal. And there's
you give an inch, they'll take a mile. That's the reality.
So thank you for your service, and thank you for your words of wisdom this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your service, Ron. Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity.
All right, and you got a hat.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed hearing from a man who spent 24 years on the streets of LA, engaged in suppressing of crime. And then he went on to work with the CIA on the war on terrorism. Interesting guy, interesting life. And these are the kind of people that we need out there in public service. Thank you very much for watching and listening.